Welcome to Tech Talk Live, a resource produced by Vision Forward. Low vision and blindness technology, tips, tricks, and information presented in a way that makes sense. And now, here are your hosts, Cory and Luke.
Hello everybody and welcome to Tech Talk Live, a very special episode here. It is Thursday, it is August. Is it really August?
It's really August.
Okay, it's Thursday, it's August, and we are here at Vision Forward to talk about the Intra-Cortical Visual Prosthesis, or the ICVP for short there. And we are going to be joined by two special guests, which we're very excited about, and we will introduce them shortly. But for the moment, I hope everybody is doing okay on this nice sunny day, or sunny here in Milwaukee anyway.
It is nice.
Yeah, and I hope that you're looking forward to the show. As usual, these shows are eligible for ACVREP credits. Cory,
they
what's the
are.
deal with that?
First, never mind. Yes, they are eligible for ACVREP credits.
Yes.
Head over to vision-forward.org/techtalklive. Under the ACVREP resources heading, you'll find a link for the evaluation form. Go ahead and fill out that evaluation form. Be as honest as possible. We have thick skin. Although we prefer all fives, if you don't mind.
Actually, I'm very sensitive, so
you are very okay.
Yeah. So please be very nice.
Well,
to us.
be nice to Luke, but be honest to me. That's fine. And part of that evaluation form is your entrance and exit code. Today's entrance code is visual.
Visual.
And we'll get it in the chat in just a moment.
Visual.
But again, that's vision-forward.org/Tech Talk Live, and your entrance code for today is visual.
Visual. I'm going to put it in the chat here. And speaking of the chat, as usual, we would like as many questions as possible.
Please.
So you can feel free to put those into the chat or into the Q&A, either way, and we will answer them as we go along. And just bear in mind, if you are putting them in the chat, you want to make sure that you're putting them to all panelists and attendees.
Yes, I think it defaults to panelists, although it's not, I mean, we'll still see it either way, but if you want everyone else to see your very intelligent question, then make sure you put panelists.
Yeah, I hope they have intelligent questions, because that's more than we'll have.
I have never seen an unintelligent question in our chat ever.
Only
before.
from us.
We just don't read them. But
Cory, what is it that we do every episode?
Well, every episode we get together.
Yes.
And we talk about our day.
Yes.
And we talk about our favorite foods.
Do we? I don't remember this.
Okay.
I was actually thinking of the joke of the day.
Oh, we do have our joke corner hour.
Yes, we do.
And they are, I know how many people, every single Tech Talk Live, they're looking forward to our jokes. They go home, they tell their families.
Pretty much what people are joining us for.
They really are. I know. It's funny because as soon as our joke is done, we lose like 80% of our participants. We think it's because they're all rushing to go tell their friends and family. It's not that the jokes are so bad. But we do have a joke today, and today's joke is, why did the Scarecrow win an award?
Oh, I'm guessing he must have been good at his job.
That could be it. I'm going to give it just a quick second. Let's see if anyone throws in their answer in the chat.
Yes, anybody know why the Scarecrow won an award? And it's almost getting to Scarecrow season, so I think this is fairly topical.
It's starting to knock on, getting close to fall. My kids go back to school in a couple weeks.
Oh, this year is just flying past.
I know.
As it does. Oh, wait, we have an answer.
Okay, go.
Okay, I can't pronounce this name.
That's okay.
But apologies. But the answer was, let's see if this is correct, he was outstanding in his field.
Yes. He won an award because he was outstanding in his field. You know what? I disagree. I believe.
I
believe it's that instead.
Okay, there we go. Excellent. Good job, Mr. or Mrs. Verhanvelwelster. That's what the name is.
Okay.
And somebody also said, he is outstabbed bug of gas fueled.
I believe that's very close.
Yes.
There's two problems. Either
Yes.
it sounded a bit German,
Yep.
or it sounded like the fingers were just off the keys
I think
to
the
one
fingers
side.
were so excited to get the
Yes,
answer in
exactly.
there that they made a few mistakes. But excellent job there,
Very
people.
good.
And if anybody has any jokes of their own, of course, then we always welcome them in the chat.
Please.
Corey, what have you been up to recently? Anything fun?
Just a couple family vacations,
Very
going
nice.
camping. I was gone because I was gone the east site 2 weeks ago.
Yes,
I was gone
yes,
for that one.
yes,
You were
yes.
riding solo.
Yes.
Everything went great.
Yes, it did, yeah.
which
Well, apart from me forgetting to unmute my microphone.
It was actually when I went back to watch it afterwards,
Yeah.
and the music stopped, and then it was
The
silent. I was
silence.
like, totally forgot to unmute himself, which is typically my job. So
Yes.
at least, you know what though, what it showed me is that I'm needed, and
You are, you
it really is. It was such a nice thing to hear.
Yeah.
So, no, other than that, nothing. Just getting ready to move. So.
Yes, indeed.
What
yes.
about you?
Well, I went to Kentucky, as
Okay.
I was telling you. Spent a few days in Kentucky there.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, the plan was to go stay at a state park and do a little bit of hiking.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it transpired that my wife is deadly afraid of bears.
Okay.
Unknown to me to this point.
So.
Also, not a fan of snakes.
Okay.
And so the signs which warned of bears and snakes kind of put her off wanting to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would think a state park, outside, hiking.
Yeah.
Probably not. Doesn't lend well to someone that's afraid of bears and snakes.
So it appears. So
Oh
it
my.
appears, yeah. Well, she
Well,
was
that's okay.
thinking we could get bear spray, but apparently they don't have bear spray around.
What? So, side note, and we have two guests who are patiently waiting. But bear spray, is this like mace for bears, or is it a deterrent? Like, do you spray it at a bear as he's charging
So
you?
the
or
idea
it
is, as the bear comes toward you, you stand your ground
Yes.
and spray the bear spray into its face.
and it says, "Hey,
I
that's
think
not
it's more.
cool."
I think it's more a deterrent. Maybe it's like pep. I honestly.
Couldn't you just use like mace or hairspray? Or, I mean, that's
Probably.
not very nice to the bear.
No. But my question
Could
is,
you use whipped cream? And then he'd be like,
no, he'd come
"Oh,
running
more."
after you. Then he
He'd
would
be like,
want more.
More, please.
No, my question is, who's got the balls to stand there as the bear's running toward them?
Well, they always say if you are attacked by a bear, you
Yeah, you
should
can't run
never
away.
run.
You
You
cannot
should
run
stand
away.
still.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway,
Anyways.
I did convince her to do a short walk, and there were no bears.
Good,
So,
good. Tons of snakes, but
yeah.
no bears.
But we did do the Evan Williams bourbon experience, and I would highly recommend it because it was
good.
way better than I expected.
Good.
I'm not particularly interested in bourbon, but it was a really interesting tour.
Okay.
And
You don't remember the second half, but it was
well,
very
yeah,
good.
exactly. Yeah, but that's how I know it was good. So highly recommended.
Awesome.
Marie here says bear spray is a last-ditch effort. Look up bear hazing to learn how to scare one off properly.
Ooh.
All right, now I'm interested.
Is it like
about
bears who
bear
go
hazing.
to they're at a fraternity?
That's what I was
and they're
wondering.
being
Yeah.
hazed?
Yeah, exactly. Poor bears. Yeah, I know the advice that we got was try and make yourself look big, make lots of noise.
Okay.
Play dead was another one if you're getting mauled. Hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Pretty sure the bear helps with that, playing dead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like, oh, you don't need to play. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
I'm glad you.
sorry, Marie also says my sister works at Yosemite and deals with bears frequently.
Oh.
Now there is a tough lady.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah. Anyway, that's probably enough. This is not bear talk, however much I would like it to be.
It's not Survivor Man or woman. No.
Bear Grylls. Oh yeah, you remember Bear Grylls?
He was awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, this is
Let's
Tech
do it.
Talk, so let's talk about some tech. So, I am very happy to introduce our guest today. We have two guests. Now, let me just pull up a notepad here. So, we have with us Dr. Troyk, who is Executive Director of the Pritzker Institute of Biomedical Science and Engineering, and Professor in the Department of Biomedical Engineering at IIT. And we also have Dr. Lane, Associate Professor of Psychology and Chair of the Department of Psychology at IIT. I don't think we've ever had guests with such impressive credentials on before, so this is our first. And hello, Dr. Troyk and Dr. Lane. How are you today?
Welcome.
Thanks for having us here.
You are quite welcome. Yes, very, very happy to have you on. We're excited to talk about this topic because it's outside of our usual realm of topics.
Yeah.
We would normally cover assistive technology devices, which are kind of external devices. But what we're talking about here is a medical device which would actually be implanted on the visual cortex. So something a little bit different, something that I don't know that too many people have heard about necessarily at the moment. So we're definitely interested to introduce our listeners and our watchers to the project. So why don't you start off, Dr. Troyk and Dr. Lane, by telling us a little bit about the project and how it got started.
So the project is called ICVP, which is a short name for the Intra-Cortical Visual Prosthesis. And this is a project that actually has its early roots back at the National Institutes of Health, dating back to 1970.
Oh, wow.
And a huge amount of work and efforts gone on by many people who have dedicated their careers to it. And about 2000, my group inherited and adopted the project after it was transitioned out of the NIH. And basically, this is a system of implantable micro-sized modules that are implanted in one side of the brain, in the vision portion of the brain. And that's located just in the back of the head, right above the neck. So if you put your hand back there and just kind of feel where your head sort of, bows down towards your neck, right there on each side, that's called the occipital lobe.
Oh, right.
And that's where it receives the vision information that projects from the retina through the optic nerve and eventually gets to that area of the brain, and that's where your brain starts to process vision information. So the idea here is that we put in a little collection of modules that have tiny little electrodes that stimulate the neurons that are in that portion of the brain. And the modules are about the size of the bump on the top of an AA battery.
Okay,
So
nice
they're very
and
small, and they're wireless, and they act like a little miniature cell phone network in the brain. And we can call them up and we can command them to stimulate the vision area of the brain using tiny electric currents that go through electrodes that come from these little modules. And the modules each have about 16 electrodes each, and you can put a collection of them, maybe up to 40, 50 of them. And the idea is that you take vision information that would be captured by a camera or a video camera, probably mounted on glasses, and then communicated directly to the brain using these wireless modules, bypassing the eyes and the optic nerve. And so it's highly experimental, and right now it's for evaluation on people who have profound blindness, basically no light perception. And the idea is to provide a crude type of artificial vision.
Excellent. I see Natasha just raised her hand, but Natasha, we don't do hand raising here, so if you have a question, please just put it in the Q&A or in the chat. That's very interesting what you were saying there, Dr. Troyk, and you said that the project had originally started in the 70s with the NIH, but I assume at that time it wasn't a kind of a wireless system they were looking at. It would be, because the technology wasn't there at that time, I assume. So was the idea at that point to have the wires coming out of the head? Yeah,
well, I think the original NIH concept did have a package that was kind of like a pacemaker of size that would be implanted in the head. And there have been other approaches that have a connector that's on the side of the head. But ours is completely wireless, and the little modules have no connecting wires or cables. And so once they're put in the brain, the covering over the brain that's called the dura is completely closed, the skull is closed, and there's no externalized connections or other hardware that's implanted. So they really are, if I can say it, kind of a remarkable element of engineering that we've done, which allows these little miniature devices that you can think of as small cell phones with area codes and phone numbers that we can call up and tell the vision cortex, the information that's coming from the camera.
That's a great analogy. I like that a lot. And is it the case that the technology to do this has only come about recently? Or
well, the NIH funded work, over a 20-30 year period for the fundamental technology, but the little modules really have been under development for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
In our team, in our laboratory, our team is made of 8 institutions, and so academic and corporate institutions. So this has been a project that has had a lot of people dedicated a lot of their lives to it over the past 20 years.
Yeah, that's awesome. We have a question from Doug in the chat here who asks, I think this is a very good question, how the modules that are implanted onto the visual cortex are powered.
So it's magnetic powering. It's kind of like the same thing that charges your phone when you have a wireless charging pad for your phone that you put it on. So it's magnetic powering, and there's a device, a donut type size device that goes on the outside of the head in that area, and it powers and communicates with the devices through a magnetic field.
That is amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That is really amazing. So, okay, so imagine that I am a person who has these implants and I need to charge them. How does that work? Is it like every day I have to kind of have this donut thing? Or?
Yeah, they don't store charge.
Okay.
You have to power them while you're using it. Yeah,
I
so
see.
it really is a safety factor, because once the donut transmitter outside is pulled away, the devices are completely inert.
Okay, excellent. We have a question in the chat from Lisa, who asks whether who says that she thinks that the person using the ICVP previously needed to have some vision, and why is that the case?
I'll let Frank take that question.
So we, in our project, we did a fairly extensive interview of individuals that received implants from earlier implants from prior projects. Mm-hmm. And what we discovered was that these individuals, some of them had usable vision with what we call phosphenes, and they were able to independently go to their, empty their trash in the trash can. They were able to identify kitchen utensils on a white counter. So the first, well, not first, but the project that we became aware of and that we interviewed the individuals, that's what they were able to see.
So I think to directly address I think Lisa's question, yes, as far as we know, the person who would participate, and we're looking for 5 participants who would volunteer for the project, they would need to have had prior normal vision. Mm-hmm. Up to maybe about the age of 10, and that's so that region of the brain would develop properly. Otherwise, we're not quite sure what kind of neural machinery we would be interfacing with.
Yeah, and I actually find that question very interesting, whether in the future it might be possible to work with somebody who's been blind from birth, and how exactly that would work.
Yeah, that's how it worked for cochlear implants, right? Because and then you get to train the area of the brain to better use the artificial vision. But right now, as far where we are in the project, which is the inaugural stage, we're looking for people who have no light perception now in either eye, both eyes, but did have approximately normal or correctable vision up to about the age of 10.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense. Let's just backtrack to the way that the ICVP works. You have these chips on the visual cortex, and you are wearing a camera, which is probably going to be in a pair of sunglasses or something like this. And the camera is wirelessly transmitting information to the implants on the brain, which are stimulating the visual cortex to release phosphenes, and this is going to give some level of vision. That's my understanding. Please feel free to correct anything I got wrong there, but that's kind of how I understood it.
That's basically right. Everybody knows that when you stimulate that area of the brain electrically, you get a perception of little spots, and those spots are called phosphenes. And the idea is that with enough phosphenes, you can assemble a type of artificial vision. And so, that's basically how it works. But how to communicate to the brain, what to tell the brain, how to translate the image information, these are all unknowns. And this is really a pioneering study in which our participants really have to tell us what's happening and what's going on. They're pioneers. They're like astronauts going into, we like to think of them that way, going to a place nobody's ever been.
Excellent, yeah. And so I think that's definitely a good motivation for people who want to benefit other people with visual impairments going forward into the future. That's a really good reason to get involved in the project, for sure. And it's a fairly limited number of people who will be eligible, because there are fairly strict guidelines. But those people who are eligible, I think it's a great thing for them to get involved in. One thing is though, and so we have a question here in the chat, which is asking how the electrode arrays are implanted on the brain. So that is one thing that we should talk about, because I mean, it is essentially brain surgery that needs to be done, but from what I understand, it's quite low risk and it's not very complicated. Do you want to talk a little bit about that process?
I love how you say it's not very complicated and brain surgery in the same
As far as brain surgery goes,
sure.
you know,
Got it.
Well, if you're a neurosurgeon, you'd say it's not very common.
Exactly.
That is very
For me, it would be very hard, I'm sure.
But the type of surgery that's done, which it's called a craniotomy, in which a section of the skull is actually removed, and then the brain is exposed, and the devices are placed in, and then the section of the skull is put back, and then it heals back in place. This is the most common form of cranial surgery that's done, and it's done all the time, particularly for people that have epilepsy and they want to diagnose where on the brain the epilepsy is starting.
Sure.
So it's a pretty common procedure, and neurosurgeons would say it's the lowest risk. In our case, it's even lower because you really don't do anything to the brain, and that speaks to the question that Gene has about how are they attached to the brain. They look like, if you looked under a microscope, like little miniature hairbrushes with these little tiny electrodes, and the electrodes are only about the thicknesses of 10 pieces of paper. So they're very, very tiny, and they just pop into the brain. We have a little tool that pushes them into the brain, and they just stay there. And then the covering of the brain, which is called the dura mater, is just closed back over, and they just stay there. So they don't really have to be attached. They don't have to be sutured or anything like that. They just naturally stay in place.
I imagine a sort of staple gun that just staples them onto the visual cortex.
Well, actually, we use the analogy of a nail gun, but some people don't like to hear that.
Yeah, that sounds dangerous. Yeah.
But it actually is. They actually are. They're put in at very high speed because that minimizes tissue damage and everything.
Sure.
And they're just kind of, the surgeon does it is very quick. They're just popped in. And in 10 minutes or so, they can do 12 or 15 devices very easily.
Wow, that's amazing. I recently had to do something with a drywall in our house, and so I had to cut a piece of drywall out to put some wood in between some studs there. And this is how I imagine the craniotomy going. Just
that
So
analogy is quite
Yeah, and then once you put the drywall back, you put a bit of tape over it and put some mud over it, and there you go. It's all good. So
just back together again.
Exactly, stick it back together. That's really cool. So I mean, I think the technology is amazing, and the thing about doing it like this is it bypasses the optic nerve and the eye. So, I mean, if there is damage along the pathway there, it doesn't matter, which isn't the case for other devices, even other medical devices. So, I mean, obviously, wearables in assistive technology at the moment are quite popular. And the types of wearable devices that you would see on the market are generally vision enhancement devices, oftentimes very useful for macular degeneration. They usually work through magnification and contrast enhancement. But in order for that to work, number one, I mean, generally you're looking at somebody with vision that's around 2800 or better. And number two, the visual pathway has to be intact because you still need the image to get through to the brain and be translated there. So obviously for people who are no light perception, a device like that is not going to be useful. And even with previous medical devices, I mean, there was the Argus, which was being used for people with retinitis pigmentosa, and that device was similar in concept, but the electrode array was implanted onto the retina. And so again, if you had any optic nerve damage, then again that wouldn't have been suitable. Whereas with this device, because you're going straight onto the visual cortex, then you're bypassing any potential problems in that area. So that seems really neat. I think the biggest kind of challenge at the moment is just understanding what type of vision somebody who has this implanted might expect, and that's what the kind of trials are about. Have you got any ideas what people might expect to be able to see?
Well, I'll give a short answer, and then Frank can give an answer from other people who have had other cortical implants, although not like our technology. But we don't expect it to restore normal vision. I mean, we don't have, you have about 10 million connections that go to that area of the brain that start at the retina. And, at best, we could put in 500 or 600 electrodes. So one won't have any kind of vision that's like biological vision. You won't be able to clearly see faces. It'll be very crude. And the best analogy I could give is, a kitchen colander that has all the little holes in it that you wash the noodles in that. Well, if you took that and you held that up in front of your face for a normal person, and then you kind of moved it around the room and kind of looked around through those holes, that's how we're guessing it might be like. But nobody really knows. Frank, do you have some comments on what type of vision people might expect?
Sure. We've been pretty surprised and amazed when we've talked to individuals who had an earlier, cruder form of a device like this. We had one individual who could see 7 phosphenes, and with those 7 phosphenes, they would line up along the side of a sidewalk so that he could ambulate independently into town and back to his house again. And for whatever reason, these phosphenes would be the most brilliant colors if he was looking at an oak tree, which we still have yet to understand exactly
That's awesome.
what that means. But for this guy, it improved his quality of life. He enjoyed the fact that he could see oak trees.
Yeah, and I think that has to be the name of the game. Ultimately, it's working to improve people's quality of life through giving them some kind of functional vision, even if it's not, what we might consider to be regular vision. Something that improves function is important.
And I think it's important to, as Dr. Troyk said before, too, that thinking of these individuals as astronauts. I think as myself, somebody who had detached retinas in both eyes and really don't have a lot of usable vision at this point. For me, obviously these individuals who are taking part in this study in the beginning are kind of pioneering and paving the way for what the future could hold. Today it's not, it's not similar to typical vision, but who knows what 50, 100 years or less, could look like.
So you've got to take those initial steps in order to move toward what's potential in the future.
And having realistic expectations, but also embracing, what is available. The gentleman who was able to walk into town or brilliant colors with oak trees, on the surface, those two things may sound like not a whole lot, but as part of this program and really embracing that those are those first couple steps.
Yeah, and Cory, I'm interested, as a person who is blind, I'm interested in your perspective on like the idea of the technology, like whether you think it would be something useful to you potentially in the future?
Yeah, for me, as somebody with seriously damaged retinas at this point and so much scar tissue that's formed over, my eyes at this point are pretty much, there isn't much. So any solution that needed healthy retinas, I would be out of luck. So I love this idea of bypassing the eyes altogether, bypassing the optic nerves, although mine are fine. But for those who have optic nerve damage, I love this idea of being able to bypass those things. It's a little harder for me as somebody right now because of a little bit of it. My left eye is completely black. My right eye, I do have some very blurry and light perception. For me, it's everything, and I use it on a daily basis. So, like this, what we're talking about today, I wouldn't risk giving up what I currently have to get what's, could potentially be provided by these solutions today. But on the flip side, if I was completely no light perception, I 100% would be on board. I'd love the idea of being a pioneer in this and really helping and showing, this is what we're seeing. This is what, and I think that's part of why it's so important for an individual to have had vision, normal vision in the past, not only to ensure that the visual cortex is formed and appropriately formed, but also so that they can communicate what they're seeing. You know, if you've never had vision before and someone says, "What are you seeing?"
Yeah, how do you
idea.
explain that?
You know, so being able to have that language and that experience to voice what you're seeing.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
yeah, I'm excited.
You're making some great points here, and it is an FDA-approved clinical trial that's taking place in Chicago in cooperation with Rush Medical University's Medical Center and the Chicago Lighthouse, where the testing will be done. But the FDA did actually have concerns. They said if a person has any residual vision, since we don't know what the effects will be, we don't know what the effects will be on the brain, so we don't want to have risking of even, and so having no light perception, which is really defined as if you can see a hand waving in front of your face, you don't qualify. So it's no light perception, because we really do want people who and volunteers who are doing it because they want to help the field, as you mentioned, and they want to pave the way and help us learn about how these interfaces could actually be useful for people.
Yeah.
And you know,
I like that.
I don't think I can underscore enough the importance of regarding the participants as pioneers. This is something that we've heard about from prospective participants for a number of years now. And we take it so seriously that we actually regard the candidates, the participants in the study, as fellow researchers along with us.
Yeah, I like that. Let's just answer a couple of questions that we got in the chat here, if we could. So Jean asks whether all, and again, this is some great questions we're getting, so thank you to the audience here. Jean asks, do all areas of the visual cortex process stimuli in the same way, so it doesn't matter where on the visual cortex you put your electrode arrays?
Well, the answer to that question is no, they don't. And in fact, where we're putting them, which is on the surface of the occipital lobe, we're actually going into what's called primary vision cortex, but we're actually going into other areas that process vision. So no, they don't process all the same way, but we don't know exactly how it processes. So this artificial interface that we've technologically created, and I'm an engineer, so I'm very proud of the technology, but when they're implanted, you know, my work is done. And now it's really the vision scientists and the psychophysical training in which we have to discover how that will happen. And I see another question here is, would one see right away? And the answer is no. First, we have to find out what each electrode does. So you try the electrode and you say, where do you see a spot? And the participant will sort of point to where they see it. And we have to map them. And then once we map them, then we can try to look at strategies for how we can encode images and use those dots, those phosphenes that are there. So there is an extensive training and evaluation period. And that's why, you know, we say, again, to emphasize the pioneering aspect of this, because it's even more than vision. It's really the first multi-channel, completely wireless interface to the brain. And now we're trying to figure out, how do we talk to the brain? And, you know, imagine if you opened up a computer and threw a bunch of wires inside and said, well, I want Windows to come up on the screen, right? Yeah. You know, so that's kind of what we're trying to do. But it's exciting for the team. It's exciting for the field. And we feel it'll be exciting for the participants.
What type of, so you had mentioned the training process there. What type of activities might people expect to do if they're part of the trial?
Well, after the devices are implanted, there'll be about a month of a recovery period, and then we'll have an inaugural evaluation to see that everything's basically working. And then probably about 2 to 3 days a week at the Chicago Lighthouse, where we have a specialized laboratory set up. And it'll be a series of tests where we apply and communicate with the devices in different ways. And we ask the person, okay, what do you perceive here? What do you perceive there? And eventually, we hope that then this will be built up into sort of a palette in which we can try to exploit and create this artificial vision. Okay. So in many respects, it'll be hard work, and the people who will be involved, the volunteers, will have to have stamina and dedication for certain.
And presumably they will have to be in the Chicagoland area because they're going to need to be able to get to the Chicago Lighthouse to do the rehab.
Well, we originally had planned for that, but actually we've now we've now altered those plans so that if someone lives out of the northern Illinois area or even out of Illinois, that we can accommodate them traveling and segmenting the testing sessions in a way that would allow them then time to go back to where they live. So we feel that is feasible at this point.
Okay. And how many participants, I'm not sure if you said this already, how many participants are you looking for at the moment?
The study allows for 5 participants, and that would be over a 3-year period. And we would implant ideally, we'd like to identify all 5. And we'd gather them together like the astronauts did in a group. And then we say, okay, who's the first that's going to go up in the capsule, right? But that may have been a little optimistic. And with COVID, that might be a little unrealistic. But we would implant a first individual. And then based on those results, then we would do 2 groups of 2. So then we would do 2 and 3 and then 4 and 5 over the 3-year period.
Okay. And so... So the first person would come, they would get the implant, start doing the rehabilitation, and then you would move forward from there. And when is what's the projected timeline for all of this to happen?
Well, we're guessing that after the first person's implanted, there would be about a 4 to 5 month period of evaluation. So we can learn. That first participant will be very important.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. And we will learn from them. And then, so probably about 8 months later or so, maybe 6, we would be implanting the second and third, and then we would test them for about 4 or 5 months, and then we would implant the 4th and 5th. And that gives us a chance to alter the system if we need to.
Are you looking to start the first candidate this year? Would that be the plan?
We are ready immediately.
Oh, wow.
So we are actively recruiting, and we have had people contact us who are interested. And so, before we're done, I'm sure that Frank can give us the contact information for the study. But yeah, we're ready to go.
Excellent. That's awesome. So yeah, if there's anybody listening to the show at the moment who thinks that they might be a candidate, then we will give information on how you can apply. And this video will also be going up onto YouTube. And so anybody who watches this video in the future, then yes, you will have the application information if you keep on watching. Actually, Dr. Lane, did you want to give us the information on how to apply now, just so we get that out of the way?
Oh, sure. The first place you should go is the main website for the project itself, which is located at chicagolighthouse.org/ICVP. So that's chicagolighthouse.org/ICVP.
Okay, just drop that into the chat for those on Zoom here.
Okay, we also have an email address that you can email us at icvp@iit.edu.
Okie dokie.
And we have a phone number that you can call with area code 312-567-5304.
All right.
And interested people can also find the clinical trial on clinicaltrials.gov.
Trials.gov. All right, so we've got all that in the chat here.
I know that's a lot of information, but there's
that's good.
ways you can reach us.
Yeah, the more information, the better, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Dr. Lane, I was wondering if we could pick your brain, because I was kind of interested in talking about some of the psychological impact of some of this stuff, and I'm assuming that's somewhat your area. One of the things I was interested in is I noticed in the application requirements that the individuals who would take part in the study would need to be well adapted to their vision loss. So I think it was they have to have lost their vision a year or more ago,
Yes.
and also be well adapted to their vision loss. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about that, and also how you would define somebody as being well adapted.
Well, I think a good example of adaptation would be someone going through vision rehabilitation. So that could be something like orientation and mobility training, or it could also be independent living skills training. And what we found is that individuals who have embraced what it means to be blind, who ambulate around the city and who use public transportation to get around, and who are independent, who have a strong support system at home, are all individuals that are ideal for this study here.
Yeah, because I know working with clients personally, and I'm sure you're the same with this, Cory, as well. Oftentimes, people who have lost their vision recently, and that could even be, you know, a year ago or more. Sometimes they still have unrealistic expectations about things that they read about online, in terms of, you know, different potential ways that they might regain their vision, whether it be, you know, through stem cell therapy or through projects like this. And those unrealistic expectations, I think, can be dangerous, because, you know, it's important for a person who's lost their vision to get the rehabilitation training that they need and accept the fact that they are visually impaired, and that's going to change the way that they do some things. And if they think there's a miracle out there that's going to restore their vision, then they're less inclined to, you know, to follow that path. So yeah, I think it is very important for people to understand exactly, you know, the limitations of the project and what they might expect.
I think from the project standpoint too, I mean, obviously, you know, patient claim comes first, but I think from a project standpoint too, you want individuals who are well adjusted. Again, coming back to that pioneer and being able to provide good information. If individuals are coming in thinking that this is going to restore their vision, they're not prepared and they're not ready to you know, accept the limitations of the vision that may be restored, you know, and B, they aren't going to be able to really communicate and embrace this trial. So from both sides, it's very important.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. How do you think people will react to the vision that they are given, Dr. Lane? Is there any ideas about you know, how it might improve their quality of life? I know you had said before, like the curb as an example, but I'm kind of wondering, like, is it expected that people will be able to see things with good contrast only, and like basic shapes, so like door frames and window frames and things like that? Is there any indications there?
Dr. Troyk could speak to the current processing software and how it detects. But the individuals that I had interviewed who saw phosphenes from a much earlier version of that were their initial response to that was excitement, the fact that they could see anything at all. And I had my own bias when I came into the project 12 years ago, which was I didn't think that this would be regarded as any type of vision to someone who's blind. And in fact, what we've learned is that we were wrong about that anything that can improve function and can improve independence is worthwhile, but it also improves quality of life.
It almost seems like at this point in the current, you know, in the current level of vision that it may provide, to me, it almost seems like another tool for your toolbox, right? You know, after having this procedure done, it wouldn't be expected that you would pop out of your house and walk around town independently. You would still use a white cane or some kind of mobility tool, but the new information that's being provided to you, if it's contrast of, you know, sidewalk versus grass, whatever it might be, is just going to add more information for you to use to better accomplish whatever your goal is. So, it almost seems to me like just another tool that will be used with other tools currently.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly right. And it's a very good way to look at it. But when we started this project, everybody was kind of thinking of what was commonly called the scoreboard vision. So you remember an old scoreboard at an old ballpark that had light bulbs, that it formed a face or something. And I think that was kind of the somewhat naive view of what we thought that would be. But, with very sophisticated image processing that's now available in very compact form, you could use this interface to encode information about specific objects or specific shapes in a unique way. So for example, even though you might not be able to, with the phosphenes, replicate the shape of a car, if you had a unique pattern of phosphenes, and if your image processing system said, oh, there's a car there, it could present that to you, and now you could learn to see in a new way. Does that make sense? That there's different ways we could use this interface beyond just constructing sort of pixel by pixel what an image would be. And we are hoping in the project that there will be some aha moments where the participant will say, oh, I just perceived this, and we'll say, there's a tool we can use. And then we'll build up the tools that are in this toolkit of artificial vision, and then really allow for the use of it by the participant. So, we lost you for a second, but I see you're back. So I thought I was going to have to take over and pinch it for you, but you're still muted. Yep, you're still muted. So I assume you'll unmute in a moment. In the meantime, I could start tap dancing or something like that. Yeah. So there you go. I think you're back.
Yeah, we should be back now, hopefully.
Yep.
Oh, that was weird.
Yeah, sorry about that. We suddenly lost bandwidth for no apparent reason.
And then it automatically muted us for some reason.
Maybe it didn't like what we were saying.
Dr. Troyk, I was, one of the things that you said that seemed really kind of interesting to me and even promising is this thought of, obviously the ultimate goal, and maybe it's not, I shouldn't say obviously it's the ultimate goal, but, in a perfect world, replicating normal vision would be a great end game. But really, it seems like the point of a tool like this is to provide independence and to improve functionality. So, like you said before, if people start to identify unique patterns as objects, and a car always presents itself in this way.
It doesn't matter what it actually looks like.
Yeah, exactly. Who cares? And being able to and I think that'll be an interesting thing for the participants to be able to disconnect and say, a car looks like this. Well, sure, but not anymore. A car now looks like this instead. And to start, and to me, that seems like it's almost more obtainable.
In a way, then it actually maybe like for people who never had vision might actually be easier in some ways because they're not expecting to see a car.
Sure.
If they're told like this square is a car.
Sure. this unique shape.
Yeah, exactly.
Once you get to a point where you can start to map out unique shapes and consistently that's
It's important not to think of it as restoration of vision, but artificial vision. Technological vision. And so you could even use the system to encode other information like infrared. You don't have to be limited to the visible light spectrum.
I was going to ask you that, but I thought it was stupid because as you were talking, I was thinking, you could do all sorts of kind of like robot vision stuff with this. Yeah,
it'd be great for jewel thieves when they have all those beams they got to get through.
all those blind jewel thieves that are around. Yeah, for sure.
That's a very cool thought, though. Again, something I didn't think of.
That's really awesome. I kind of. I can't help but think of the brain port when we're talking about this, because the brain port is like a very similar concept, except the electrode array is on the tongue instead of being in the brain. So, it's a whole sensory substitution kind of way of doing it. But it's basically the same idea. I mean, the electrodes for the brain port are stimulating the tongue. The electrodes for the ICVP are stimulating the visual cortex. And I know that the brain port tends to work best with high contrast things. So is that kind of expected to be the same with the ICVP?
You know, sensory substitution is not new. In fact,
Right.
at the earliest stages, it was done with an array of I think, vibrating stimulators that was on the back.
Oh, yeah.
Because
yeah,
it
sure.
was, you know, but you know, the problem is that when you do sensory substitution, you rely upon a map translation in the brain, right?
Right.
Because the tongue isn't connected to the visual area of the brain. And so you have to then do a map translation in the brain. And so it's kind of the wrong interface, right? It's like trying to play the piano with your elbows.
Yeah, sure.
It's the wrong interface, but some people can be very good at that kind of spatial map translation.
Yeah.
Whereas others find it difficult. But here, since we're going directly to the vision area of the brain, I think we have the greatest opportunity to exploit the tremendous vision processing that's there. You know, almost half of the primate and human brain is dedicated to processing vision in some form or another.
Wow.
And you have a tremendous amount of neural machinery there that can be tapped into, which has always been the thought that this could be a real advantage of cortical devices over retinal devices, because at the retina, you're limited to what nature gave you at the retina, whereas at the brain, you're limited to what nature gave you at the brain, but there's so much more.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and so, and of course, the vast majority of people who do have severe vision impairment do not have intact retinas or optic nerves. And so, you know, that's why this project has really been pursued by so many people for so long, because the potential gains are high, even if it's not immediate.
Yeah, and I do want to ask you about what potentially might lie in the future of this type of project. But first of all, we do have a couple of questions here in the chat. So somebody asked what age range the participants need to be in.
Frank, you want to take that?
Yeah, the candidates need to be between the ages of 18 and 70 years old.
Okay, that's a really good
Yeah.
spread, yeah. Doug asks if it might be possible to detect distances by varying the intensity of the signal, which I think is an interesting question. Like, will you be able to tell how far things are away? Because, I mean, with binocular vision, the differences that you get from the two eyes give you the depth perception, but obviously in this case, that's not going to be there. So how would that work?
Well, this speaks again to this issue of it's an artificial interface. We don't quite know how we can use it, how we could encode things into it. And the more creative the person is and the more observations they can give us, the greater the likelihood is for these aha moments where we can say, we could encode distance this way.
Right.
And again, you know, capability that helps somebody in visually guided tasks, whether it replicates actual biological vision or not, is valuable to someone particularly who has no light perception.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you could even do color. You know,
I was just thinking that color gradation.
color. Yeah.
Yeah, the
be
stronger
different.
the color,
Whatever it might be. Yeah, because again, when you stop thinking of it as restoring vision and start thinking of it as a tool, then color, to some degree, you know, can be used more than different. Exactly.
Yeah, and from previous work that's been done, it is known that you can get colors by the stimulation and manipulating the stimulation in a certain way. So back to the car analogy, you know, if you had a group of red phosphenes in the middle of your vision field, whenever a car is detected by your vision system, you could turn on the red phosphenes. And say, hey, I got a car here, you know, danger.
Yeah,
so,
warning.
So this is exactly right. And this is exactly the kind of creative thinking that we're hearing, you know, from you who does have a vision impairment that can help guide the project. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the participants to really be researchers along with us.
Very cool.
Excellent. And then we have another question here. So somebody basically says that it sounds like this process could involve several years of learning, relearning, you know, vision in a new way. And I think that's a fair point.
I think it is, and we don't really know how far it can go.
Yeah.
And you know, what are probably naive notions about how to manipulate the vision system to start with may be completely swept aside by what we find out during the study.
Sure.
So yes, indeed. You know, if you think, how long does it take you to learn to walk?
Yeah.
You know, actually, you don't learn to walk; you learn not to fall down.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, sure.
And so yes, there. So the interface, the brain interface here, is really the key feature, and that it's implantable. It's safe from the FDA standpoint. It doesn't pose a safety risk, and we now have more electrodes to work with over a bigger area of the brain than anybody's ever had.
And I wanted to just push you on that point. We are reaching the end here, but I'm assuming that the major limitation, apart from the fact that you don't exactly understand, you know, how it's going to work at the moment, but one of the big limitations must be to do with the number of electrodes that can be put onto the visual cortex. Is that a correct assumption? And if so, do you expect that to improve just naturally as technology improves?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, presently, the devices are designed to have 16 electrodes that are in this little circle that's about the size of the button on the AA battery, which is about, you know, half a centimeter. But that's only the current technology. Other electrode arrays allow for up to 100 or more electrodes in that same space. So we chose these particular ones because it was an achievable technology for the study we wanted to do. But yes, once we could establish that there's basic feasibility here, now we're just looking at technology to improve density, and that's the history of our technology, right? I mean, we're all doing stuff today that would have been unheard of 15 years ago, right here, and it's because of the improvement of technology. So we do expect that will happen. So we're laying the building blocks right now that will guide how to improve that technology.
Yeah. Brilliant. All right, well, we have pretty much reached the end of our hour here, so I do need to do some closing things here. If anybody has any questions quickly before we finish up here, then please get them into the Q&A or the chat. And I would like to thank Drs. Troyk and Lane for joining us today. It's been extremely informative, and if you are interested in applying to be a participant in the study, then the information is in the chat. But just quickly here, again, you can go to chicagolighthouse.org/ICVP. You can email icvp@iit.edu. You can call 312-567-5304. Or you can go to clinicaltrials.gov to see the information there on the trial. Do you, Drs. Troyk and Lane, do you have any closing thoughts for us before we finish up here?
No, only that we appreciate very much the opportunity to be able to speak to your listeners, and the whole team is ready and very enthused. So I urge anyone who feels they might be interested. We have a two-step process. It's pre-screening and screening, so you can learn about the project first and all that, and there's no real strong commitment up front.
Okay, so yeah, if you have any interest at all, then get in touch and find out more about the project.
Well, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. Just for those that are stepping off, again, we are ACVREP eligible. Head over to vision-forward.org/techtalklive. And your exit code for this afternoon is Cortex.
It is indeed. Let me put that into the
Cortex
chat here.
is your code. Again, vision-forward.org/techtalklive. Click on the evaluation form under the ACVREP resources heading and fill that out.
And of course, don't forget to visit our YouTube channel.
It is,
and
yes.
What is our YouTube channel, Cory?
Our YouTube channel is youtube.com/infocustechnology.
Indeed.
We produce weekly videos, so if Tech Talk Lives get posted, and then the opposite weeks of Tech Talk Lives, we produce 15, 20-minute videos or less, usually around 15 minutes, and those are more produced videos diving into specific products. Most recently, we just had a 2-part series on the Clover Book Pro and the Clover 10?
No, that one, you just gave the game away. And that's the next one to release.
Oh. Rewind. Never mind. Nobody has any idea what's coming out next.
And talking of next, our next Tech Talk Live, Cory, What do we have going on in our next Tech Talk Live?
Our next Tech Talk Live is...
Yes, I can't remember. We do have a schedule, but
You asked
sadly...
me because you couldn't remember.
I couldn't remember, yes. Sadly, I can't remember off the top of my head, but we do have a schedule. So.
Head over to vision-forward.org/Tech Talk Live. You'll see a schedule there, and you, including us, will all learn
yes,
what's up next.
And I do know that not next time, but the time after, we will be having somebody from WeCab on who make the brain ports. So that should be a nice, interesting one as well. But that's not next time. That's going to be the time.
And then also quickly at the end of September, September 30th, we're going to have a special Tech Talk Live as part of our Vision Connections Conference hosted by Vision Forward. And we're going to have a panel on a couple of special guests. Both individuals have been on Tech Talk Live before, and I guarantee it's going to be quite entertaining. So that'll be September 30th.
And with that being said, thanks again, Drs. Troyk and Lane, and we look forward to seeing you at the next Tech Talk.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for another Tech Talk Live. If you enjoyed Cory and Luke's antics, join us again in 2 weeks. To register, visit vision-forward.org/Tech Talk Live.